And we're back. Codcast season 3. This is going to be episode 8 as we get down to the last couple weeks of the season. Last week of the regular season. Host Matt Pajak alongside me, Adam Greene, senior writer for the Cape League. Bringing them in today to talk a little bit more about the All-Star game. We had Antonio Morales, MVP for the West, on our last episode. But Adam was present, and he wants to talk a little bit more about everything else that was going on that day. The home run derby. Can't really think of a much better venue than YD for a home run derby. So we'll get into that, and then we'll talk a little bit about what's been going on the Cape. No one's got their pulse on the Cape like Adam Greene. And then I'm going to bring in Michael McAvinn to talk a little bit about his role with the Cape, what he does, what he's observed, what he's learned. He is a multi-year Cape veteran, much like Adam Greene, and really excited to kind of talk with him. But before we get to him, the floor belongs to recovered from losing his voice, Adam Greene. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, it was rough. Lost the voice for a little bit, but happy to be back. And we're flying through the season. It's going great. It's going by super fast. Um, Excited to take a look back at the All-Star game. As always, one of the better events that the Cape holds every year, if not the best event. And this year was no different. There were unbelievable amount of fans packed into YD. On Saturday, July 19th. It was it was such a great event, had such a good time, and the Cape's best talent really got to showcase their abilities. There's something so, uh it's a phenomenon with sports when there's a big game or there's something unlike just a regular season game. There's something like unique in the atmosphere that day. You really feel it. And from the time I got to Red Wilson Field at like 9 a.m., fans weren't there yet. Fans were, waiting to come in. They had fans lined up in the parking lot for when the gates opened. You could feel that there was something different about that day. There was something different about what was going down. It was not just a regular Cape League game, which already has such a unique and vibrant energy, but people knew that they were going to see something special that day, and that's exactly what happened because we got an absolute it was an offensive showcase for the ages. I felt like every second someone was going deep, but the day was filled with just excitement and a great baseball atmosphere with Kuhio Aloy taking home the home run contest championship, and then the East taking the All Star game 13-8. But overall, it was a great event. And Matt, where do you want to start? Because there was so much that went on that day.
I want to start with the home run derby because the home run derby at YD. There's some ballparks out there on the Cape that maybe wouldn't be the best place to host a home run derby, but those unmarked fences, everybody knows, they're not that far out there. And you had mentioned Aloy, Kuhio Aloy, his brother. Just a couple weeks ago was drafted relatively high. He was a night one draft of the Orioles out of Arkansas, Golden Spikes winner. So there's a lot of I guess, prestige that comes with the Aloy name in
For
college
sure.
baseball recently. Obviously doing it for the Hawaiian Islands. How many home runs did Aloy hit? Who else was, in it all the way down to the end? Like, how did the home run derby go at YD?
Um, Aloy hit in the final round of the Derby and the championships. He hit 12, but that was tied with Easton Breyfogle of Wareham. So they went to like a 1 minute swing off, and Breyfogle went first. He hit three in the minute, and then Aloy hit three and had like 15 seconds left. Absolutely crushed his fourth homer and took home uh the crown, I guess. And that was pretty much as close to a walk-off homer as you're gonna get in the Derby. Um, but what you were just mentioning the Aloy family. What was cool is you mentioned when he got drafted a couple weeks before that. He actually signed his contract, making him officially an Oriole like 45 minutes before the Derby. So great day for the Aloy family. That was pretty cool. But you were also mentioning the fence out in YD. something cool that I did before the Derby started was I took a couple of the foul balls of the game I had been to the night before in Falmouth or 2 nights before. There were a couple flyouts to like deep center field in Falmouth that would have been like absolute bombs at YD. So we were prepared for some apps to see some, crazy homers, and uh we did. People were hitting the treetops. I think Daniel Jackson hit the furthest home run. Daniel Jackson of Chatham, who's been one of the better players all season. He had like a 472-foot homer. So the kids were putting the power on display. It was really cool to see, and the energy around the home run derby was once we got into that like final swing off, people were really they were anticipating what they were going to see because that's a cool moment. It's everybody loves a home run derby, arguably one of the better skills showcases in sports, I guess so to speak. But the other member of the final three in the home run derby were it was Aloy and Breyfogle, as mentioned, and Carson Tinney of Brewster. The other members were Brendan Lawson of Brewster and I'm blanking on the last guy. There was there was six total, and then they had a one-on-one in the first round, and whoever hit more homers in their allotted time moved to the final round. And then in the last three, they went to see who hit the most, and of course that's when Breyfogle and Aloy tied at 12 and went to the 1 minute swing off.
Yeah, it's I remember back in 2015 watching the home run derby at the Cape All-Star game. It was at Wareham, and if you can even believe it, Pete Alonso was in this thing, and he hit no home runs at Wareham during the home run derby. So I'm glad you got to see some fireworks because Pete Alonso saved all of his home runs for the actual derby many years later. Obviously, I would have never predicted that he was going to go on to have those kind of derby performances at the big league level, given what he did when he was a member of the Bourne Braves. But sounds like a really cool home run derby experience. Do you have a grand total on home runs that were hit? I saw it somewhere. Like, I think Aloy and Breyfogle both topped 30 across their 2 rounds. Is that correct?
That sounds right. It was because if Aloy had 16 in the final round, he was probably right around 30 because he had 14 or something in the first round. And just to go back quickly I couldn't remember who the sixth member was. It was the Cape League leader in home runs, Micah New. So don't know how that slipped my mind, but he was also
Micah
in the derby. Yeah.
Yeah. So Arkansas was well represented.
They were. Yeah.
Razorback won, and a Razorback is still leading the Cape in home runs, right?
Yep.
Very cool. So there was the home run derby. There wasn't anything else other than they probably did the autograph tent. Let me ask you a question.
Yep.
How packed in there was it? Because when I think of YD, I don't really think of a ton of room to sit.
No, I didn't either. And then they proved me wrong because it was packed. The recorded attendance was 6,137, and if you told me that they had more than that, I would not blink an eye because they were there. It was packed. I had never seen that many people I had not even seen close to that many people at YD, and there was a line to get in throughout the entire day, and they had the whole the track where they have right next to the baseball field at the DY high school. They had the whole fan fest area there, and that was packed all day with tents, vendors. As you mentioned, the autograph sessions for all the kids and the players spent a couple hours signing for all of them. So that was cool. And they just had from one end of the fence to the other end of the fence, it was packed. It was tough to move around at some points. They even had people lined up all around the fence in the outfield, of course. And for the home run contest, that was pretty cool to see. There was a ton of people behind the fence.
Yeah, All-Star game on the Cape, always a fun day. If you haven't been and you go to the Cape regularly, make a note on your calendar for next summer. Make sure you get out there and check it out. Adam, I want to talk about the game itself. And if you could do me a favor here and kind of point out some guys that stood out to you, some performances that stood out to you, other than the obvious, the two guys that won the MVP, Trey Broussard of Harwich and Antonio Morales of Falmouth. What did you like? What kind of stood out to you?
Yeah, I was pretty impressed by Ryan Speciak of Hyannis. He gave up a couple hits, but he struck out the side in his one inning of work. He had been one of the or had been one was one of the better relievers with Hyannis throughout the course of the front half of the season, and he brought that into the All Star game. And his stuff was playing. He was getting a good swing and miss. Got hit a little hard, but you know. The strikeouts were there, and the pitching was interesting because when you had that much offensive talent present, you were going to the pitchers were going to give up runs. And you mentioned there's times on the Cape where some of the best talents don't perform. Pete Alonso didn't hit a home run in the home run derby. Hall of Famer, Colorado legend Todd Helton had one of his worst summers on the Cape when he direct quote, he said he felt like he could not hit. So these guys, just because they have a bad game, bad performance, it's not indicative of their talent. And all of these guys are Cape League All-Stars for a reason. And I was so impressed by the offensive output during this game. I mentioned before, it felt like every second somebody was hitting a home run. Ashton Larson, who had been with Chatham and was just going on a crazy tear, went deep. Aiden Robbins, just throwing out some names that hit homers. Cashel Duggar. It was cool to see. So, or sorry, Cashel Duggar did not hit a homer. He had a what performance am I looking at? It was probably somebody else. Dalton Wentz is who I was looking at, but
Dalton Wentz. There you go.
yeah, no, I had to correct that. So these are just some of the names that stood out over on the west side. Unfortunately, they did not take home the win, but Ryan McKay drove in 2 runs. So if you look all around the Cape, every team was well represented, and every team it seemed like they had somebody that was contributing to the game. And some of the better pitchers on the Cape that are going to be in contention for outstanding pitcher of the year, reliever of the year, didn't have the greatest performances. And then some guys that came into the All-Star game looking to really bolster their reputation on the Cape did have a really good game. That could be guys like Dom Desch, who closed it out for the East with 2/3 of an inning. We have Tyler August, who was with Hyannis, pitched a clean inning. So there were some performances that made myself, I'm sure, made other scouts and then fans around the league open their eyes to what some of these guys can do.
Yeah, and I think that's something that maybe isn't appreciated by as many people as it should be. And this is something that I had a discussion during the MLB All-Star game. So, okay, during an All-Star game, what is the toughest position? And I'd kind of asked this question to a couple different people, and it's like everybody had the same answer. Toughest position to be represented in an All-Star game is a pitcher. They got the toughest job because the lineup's relentless. Like normally a pitcher goes out there and it's like, okay, well, you're going to face potentially 1, maybe 2 All-Stars on a good lineup, and then everybody else is just there's some fall off, but it's like in an All-Star game, your 8 and your 9 hole hitters are that quality. So it's a tough assignment being a pitcher in an All-Star game where the lineup is so deep. Maybe that's part of the reason why we saw such a high-scoring affair in YD, coupled with the size of the ballpark. It's a hitter-friendly environment to begin with. So yeah, I'm with you. I don't think you can put too much stock into a pitcher's performance in an All-Star game. It's a little bit like being a goalie in the NHL All-Star game. People want to see goals, and those guys just they're getting peppered with shots because there's no defense. But I do want to move on here. It's July 29th as of this recording. and we're heading towards the last week of the Cape season. I want to talk about this past week on the Cape, some performances maybe that stood out to you, and then kind of get your pulse on how things are trending as we hit the playoffs. So I don't know, anything that you saw this past week in particular stand out to you?
I think it was just the closeness of competition, I guess is the best way I can put it. We're well aware that 4 of the 5 teams in each division make the playoffs, and I have no idea who are going to be the 2 teams that are left out, because the division races are so close and they are literally changing on a day-to-day basis. Like you can't look at it now and then today you cannot look at the standings and be like, okay, tomorrow this is what it's going to be, or this is the direction it's trending towards, because there's so much variation with these teams and the talent is so equal right now, I guess, because we know that the turnover of the rosters is always going to be something that Cape managers and Cape coaching staffs have to deal with. So I think it's going to be who can do the best job of keeping their pitching staff fresh right now, who can keep up the offensive output in the stretch after the All-Star game heading into the playoffs. But some of the names that stood out to me. So one of the name that stood out to me maybe the most over the second half of the season is the guy that seems like he hits a grand slam every game. That's Jack Natili with Cotuit. Absolute, like nothing I've ever seen. I would be hard pressed to find somebody that has had 3 grand slams in a single Cape summer. I'd put all my money on it being the first time that's ever happened. So just an unreal stretch from him. He's been such a revelation for Cotuit once he got here, really just bringing some consistent offense. And they're 4th place in the West right now, but they're only 3 games back of first. And if the season ended today, they'd be in the playoffs. So, just get in is what the coaches always say. With Harwich last summer, they had less than 7 wins in July last year, and they won the title. So on the pitching side, Tyler Albanese is our reigning Cape League Pitcher of the Week since went home, but he had a really impressive performance against Brewster. He threw 4 innings of relief and struck out 6, didn't allow a hit, and recorded the save. And as I mentioned, the standings they're crazy right now because Harwich they're taking a 6-game winning streak into the final stretch of the season, and they're sitting atop the East right now with 19 wins, and they're 19-12-3 is their exact record. Whitey and Brewster tied for second, and it looked like it was going to be a race between those two for a long time, even after Brewster started the season on a 6-game win streak and YD had their 10-game win streak. It still seemed like those are going to be the juggernauts moving forward. And then Harwich I'm not even going to say come out of nowhere, because they have been really consistent over the last couple weeks, but they've taken it to another level at the back half of the season and taken over first. And Orleans is right on their tails. Orleans has had a fantastic month. They're 11-9 against teams over 500, which is one of the better records in the league. Only Harwich is better. So Orleans is right there too. So if you're asking me who's going to come out of the East, I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, and in the current climate of college summer ball, there's a lot of players that are coming in and out. We saw that a lot this summer on the Cape, and I think you look at a team like Harwich, and like you had mentioned this a couple weeks back, the pitching just being so consistent, and we continue to see that. You check the box score every day on these guys, and it's like there's another 5-inning, 2-hit, 1 run, 2 walk, 4 strikeout start from Troy Dressler, Matthew Heiberger. They've been so good on the starting pitching front and in the bullpen, where they've been winning the close games, they've been winning the low scoring games, and then on the nights when the offense wants to show up, they win those games too. So Harwich has been great on that front. You mentioned Orleans. I do want to tip the cap there. Again, another consistent lineup, a lot of the same names we've seen all summer. Potestio, Ix, Cashel Duggar. I mean, these guys have been in there since day one of the season. They're still in there today, and they've steadily performed. So Yeah, it's I think that's a huge part of what you're looking at right now as we get to August is like what teams have the most cohesion and what teams are trying to kind of like patch it together and try and find some kind of foundation or some solid ground under them before we get into these playoffs. But it should be really interesting because I don't think there is, one team that is that much more talented than everybody else. And you know what it is in the playoffs. It's like one game can turn the whole thing.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, a couple of notes I mentioned, Troy Dressler there. He had a really nice start this past week. Over the weekend, 5 innings, 2 hits, no earned runs, 3 walks, 6 Ks versus YD. Tyler Pitzer, I feel like he was one of the first, players of the week early in the season. He's still hanging around and he's still shoving. I mean, he's had a really good summer. 7 games, 24 and a third innings, 14 hits, 1 earned run, 9 walks, 35 punches, and a minuscule 0.37 ERA. So he's been interesting. You mentioned Aiden Robbins. I mean, that's the most exciting bat in that Harwich lineup. He had a home run this week against Orleans, and then you mentioned Daniel Jackson in the home run derby, hitting the longest ball out. He had a 3 for 5 with a double and a home run this week against YD, and that's another one that's been steady since the beginning of the summer. He's hitting 284 with right around a 900 OPS, 4 home runs, 10 bags, getting ready to go back to Georgia for another season. So it's the kind of the consistent performers are the theme at the moment, I think, on the Cape as we turn to August.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the one of the final notes I'll have on the standings is per league historian Mike Richard. He was telling me how 2003, the East Division had the closest finish from top to bottom in history. All 5 teams were only separated by 3 games. And right now, if you look at the standings, Harwich and Chatham, who are first and fifth place, are separated by 3.5 games. So we very well could have the closest finish from top to bottom in Cape League history, which would just be a fantastic antidote for how well these teams are playing and how talented they are and how great the rosters around the Cape are throughout the start of the season to the finish of the season.
Well, Adam, buckle up. It's about to be a wild ride here in the final week. A lot can happen. Playoff seeding on the line, and then obviously we get to the fun stuff, which is playoffs. But appreciate you taking the time to hop on, talk All-Star. It was incredible insight there on all the different performances and especially the home run derby, which is obviously so special when guys are hitting over 30 home runs. But we'll have you on again next week. We'll talk a little bit more about what's going on the Cape, but I'm going to let you get on with your day. And where to tonight?
I will be venturing all the way out to Wareham to see them host the Chatham. So excited about that. Get to see Daniel Jackson, hopefully put on a show again. So let's do it. We got about a week left. We're looking forward to the playoffs.
Beautiful. Well, Adam Greene, thank you very much for joining us. For those who are still listening, hang around here for just another second. We're going to be welcoming in Michael McAvinn. We are welcoming in now the Director of Ops for the Cape Cod Baseball League, Michael McAvinn, who has as extensive of a track record with the Cape League as maybe any. He's worn a lot of different hats. He's done a lot of different things. It goes back to 2019. Michael, welcome to the show. How you doing? It's almost August. Do you need a coffee?
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me. I'm glad I finally got to make this happen. Been watching all the episodes. They've been great. And it's been a great season so far. Doing something I had a little bit of experience with last year, but really taking on a lot more responsibilities and overseeing a lot in the league. So, it's been great.
Yeah, so Director of Baseball Operations is a title that varies widely in responsibilities from professional baseball to college summer ball. What all goes into the day-to-day for the Director of Baseball Ops for the Cape Cod Baseball League?
Yeah, so now that the season started, there was a lot of off-season work helping our commissioner, John Castleberry, along with our deputy commissioners. Since the season started, it's been special events, really manning all-star game operations, our city field game against the draft league, Fenway workout. So really a lot of the stuff that maybe isn't happening on the Cape and in front of everyone, but doing the logistics with that, making sure everybody's covered there. But then the day-to-day stuff is really overseeing the roster management. We got a ton of guys coming in and out every day. The teams that we got 30 active here at all points, but usually takes about 60 guys to man the roster for the season. So I'm overseeing pretty much everybody who comes in, everybody who goes out. When you're a temporary player, you can be released at any point, but when you're a permanent player, there's got to be reason. So I go through these transactions, make sure that everything's legal in our handbook. We're doing everything, following all the rules, league compliance, manning our rosters well with other leagues, making sure we're not using our Cape League position to kind of pick apart other summer leagues, although we do it as formally as we can, going through the proper procedures, talking to coaches, commissioners of other leagues, but really just making sure that the on-field product is allowed to happen every day.
Yeah, I can relate to that. It wasn't nearly the job that it is now for you back when I did it in 2015. Just in that the volume of players was a lot less. I think we had between 400 and 450 players that summer. I think you're talking more in the 600 range, which is a significant uptick in volume and kind of speaks to the state of college baseball and kind of the craziness of the calendar. But yeah, I mean it's a lot. There's a lot that I don't think a lot of people realize that these different teams are juggling on a day-to-day basis with players potentially coming in and out, managing innings. There's surprises every day. And then to your point, when a guy leaves, where do you find these players? And like there are some guys that aren't, a lot of times on the pitching side, there's a lot of guys that aren't, throwing in the summer. So maybe you get them from there. Or maybe they're in another league and another league is, gracious enough to, release the player to give them the opportunity. But I'm sure you can speak to it better than I can. Pitching's at a premium in the summer.
Yeah, it's so I had the privilege of being with Harwich Mariners for years, working alongside their GMs, coaching staff. So I've seen a lot of what goes into it. It's tough. All these guys, especially like you said it now with the transfer portal, these guys are on innings limits, especially with how much they're thrown at school. And the second that the guy hops in the portal and picks a new school, these coaches don't really have much of an incentive to let them come out here, possibly hurt themselves, which is rarely the case, but it's just the risk that these guys aren't willing to take. So it's a big part of it is looking at other summer leagues close to us, the NECBL. We wait until their season ends, which wraps up actually tomorrow and maybe some games Thursday. So it's a lot of talking to guys there, seeing when their summer is going to end, when they're going to have the freedom to come up and play on the Cape. But then working with some of the leagues who are in the allied, there's an allied league with a number of summer leagues who they all understand that we're trying to get guys up in the Cape. Guys want to come up to the Cape Cod Baseball League, even if they are contracted somewhere else. A lot of the coaches understand it. Their college coaches will talk for them, try to get them boosted up here. So it's really just keeping your eyes on the sharpest talent wherever it is, whoever's got the innings available, and working around these tough school schedules, tough way that the Cape League aligns in the summer with the draft and everything. So there's a lot that goes into it. And like you said, just finding who's still there and who's still got innings.
Yeah. Now I want to talk a little bit more about you and your background. Game day intern back in 19 and 21, did some work with the commissioner back in 22, GM intern in Harwich in 23, worked with the league a little bit and Harwich last summer, and now just with the league this year. Where are you from? How did you get linked up with the Cape League? How have you kind of turned being a game day intern in 19 into, being involved much more in the inner workings of the league years later?
Yeah. So I'm from Braintree, Massachusetts. I went to Boston College High School, and I went to University of Massachusetts Amherst. So I've been coming down to Chatham my entire life. Made it pretty easy, playing baseball growing up, knowing I wanted to be involved. My dad's been an umpire. He actually stopped recently, but he was an umpire my entire upbringing. Umped in the Cape League. Knew some people that I knew I could get in contact with. He and Steve Englert, Harwich's head coach, were both Catholic Memorial alumni. So it kind of helped that transition, getting involved there. Became a game day intern. 2020 season was canceled due to COVID. And once I returned in 2021, kind of had more of a position of power amongst the game day interns in Harwich. Leveraged that to getting invited to the Hall of Fame ceremony with Harwich in 2021, where I met at the time, Commissioner Eric Zamuda. I worked for him in the 2023 season. I liked the league administration stuff, but knew that I wanted to be more hands-on with the team. Went through my connections that I had made in Harwich those 2 seasons prior. I reached out to our GMs, Alex Lum and Kevin Bogan, and they were totally open to creating the GM intern position there. And from there, loved everything, handled a lot of the equipment, a lot of the player travel, helped Alex with a lot of the housing for the guys, which is maybe some of the most important parts of the league that goes on behind the scenes. And then pretty much just leveraged up from there. Got to know Steve Englert well, wanted to take on more of a baseball operations role, and ended up doing that for the 2024 season, along with working for John Castleberry in the league office again.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, just the amount of experience that you've had, it really is an interesting look, for you at kind of like the underbelly of how this whole thing works. Because, for the people listening that don't know, it's entirely a volunteer league. So, a lot of this work that you're talking about, whether it be this year and the past years working with Harwich, dealing with travel and dealing with host families and trying to get everyone, placed and all that. I mean, it's a puzzle at times, and it's a labor of love. So, kind of really interesting that you've had at such a young age an opportunity to see all of that. That being said, I'm really curious, especially in your more recent years, what you've learned more so on the player side, the baseball ops side of things, scouting, player development. What have you learned about the industry in recent years that maybe you didn't know, maybe as a game day intern in 19 and 21?
Yeah. So as a game day intern, you're showing up there, you're setting up the tables, raising the flags. You're seeing these guys come in and play ball, and that's really it. That's as much as I saw. I knew I was always looking to get into that next step. But being in the dugout with Harwich last year, really seeing these guys are humans. These guys are kids. They're out here. They're trying to have fun. They're trying to deal with the stress of having coaches ask them about the portal, ask them about now having to deal with NIL type stuff. There's so much that goes into this. They're not just here to play baseball. They're here to, that's what they are here to do, but they got so much more on their mind. They're juggling draft expectations, school expectations, just where they're slated, everything. There's so much pressure on these guys. So to see the ones who can really just come out, put that stress aside and go out there and have fun, those are the guys who I love talking about. I love really getting to learn more about what the ins and outs of a future big leaguer. It's really cool. You don't get to see that as much when you're overseeing organizational stuff and not really as hands-on with the team. But being able to last year have all the TrackMan synergy info and really having just multiple stars on your team and see, oh, okay, this guy is obsessed with the metrics and all the analytics behind his stuff. And okay, this guy doesn't care at all. This guy wants to go out there. He wants a pitching coach to call his stuff, understand what he does best, and he just wants to use his powers to do his stuff. Other than that, it's cool really seeing that no two players are exactly the same.
Yeah, and I guess you talked about a lot of different things there. You talked about the TrackMan, the synergy, you talked about the differences in the players, and kind of getting your brain wrapped around a little bit more of the individual player and all of the different environmental factors, if you will, that are kind of around that player at any given time. Where do you see your professional career going? What are your aspirations? What's something, based on everything that you've observed that you might want to do? You see the Cape crawling with scouts every summer. You talked about the draft a little bit. How do you plan to kind of use this experience that you've had to take you to that next, wherever you might see yourself going?
Yeah. So I want to eventually end up working in a front office, baseball ops. But in terms of entry level, I'm spending a lot of my time around scouts right now. The commissioner of the league, John Castleberry, is a 30-plus year major league scout, along with our senior deputy, Ted Leakus, another 30-plus year scout. So I'm always learning from them, trying to pick their brains, get some advice on what I could bring to the next level, maybe areas that I should be looking at to work. And I think the scouting aspect is so important because out of everybody who I've spoken to in the Major League, already in Major League Baseball, working in front offices, the player evaluation skill is, it's one that even you spoke on. Player evaluation is something that you just need to have in any of these roles, I think, to climb the ladder. If you don't have feel and you don't really know what you're looking at, it's hard to ever progress in a position, in a really baseball or orchestrated role, which is where I'm trying to really learn right now. Taking this summer to try to make it to as many batting practices, just see infield all the time, really learn what I'm looking at, what goes into being a future major leaguer. And so from there, I'm currently doing a master's in analytics through UMass Amherst that I'm trying to possibly look into data analytics roles, player development, really keep a broad horizon, look at everything, see where I could possibly be fit. But if I had to guess, I'd probably start in either an amateur scouting role with the experience I have or just a entry-level baseball ops position.
All right. So you mentioned scouting. You mentioned your interest in scouting. There's been a lot of good players on the Cape this summer, both pre-draft, post-draft, players coming in, coming out, the USA guys that came in and some of the USA guys that came back. Have you been writing reports this summer? Are there certain players that have stood out to you? You want to kind of give us a handful of names and kind of break them down for us at a high level. Guys that you like this summer on the Cape.
Yeah, there's been a handful of. There's been so much great talent out here. Obviously, it was interesting how Team USA fell this year, traveling to Japan, taking 2 teams. So we saw a lot of the top-rated guys coming in leave early, but we've still had so much great talent. 2 of my favorite bats who are off the Cape at this point, Jaron Advincula. I think he's the best. He's got the best hit tool on the Cape. He's a star. You talked to him early on. That kid's going to be great. He already is. Henry Ford, he was with Chatham for the first half of the season and had to leave for draft reasons. And then obviously being in the transfer portal, I'm sure Tennessee wanted to keep their guy knowing where he is. Hyannis had Jackson Willits. He had an unbelievable summer until also came to an end early. Those are a few of the guys who stood out really early. Levi Clark, I loved watching him. He was over in Wareham, Tennessee. He was playing catcher, outfield, really showing, even as a true freshman, that kid's got a bright future. I'm excited to hopefully have him back out here next year. In terms of arms,
I was going to say, let me put you on the spot real quick. Levi Clark said catcher outfield. Where do you see his long-term position?
Long-term, I don't know how he'll feel. I think outfield. I liked him more in the outfield. He still has the catcher tools. He's young, but for a guy who could play both, a lot of the guys we've seen out here already, I don't know. I think he played better in the outfield, to be completely honest.
Yeah, catcher is one of those weird positions. You just never know. It's like if you think about like Austin Wells, there were a lot of people that had question marks around whether Austin Wells was going to catch in pro ball, and then he caught in pro ball, and now he's a catcher for the Yankees. So
he's a Cape League MVP.
Yeah. Let me get your thoughts on some of the arms that have kind of come in and out.
Yeah, some of the guys who I mainly marked, going down the list, Wareham, Caleb Appleby. He's a AP Austin P guy. He's been great. all-star, stayed throughout the season. We've had Bourne had some arms that have taken off recently. Jonathan Stevens from Alabama, he was great. Another Alabama arm, Matthew Heiberger. He's been out in Harwich. He's had an unbelievable summer. He's unfortunately taking off right now, so we won't get to see him in playoffs, but he was a guy who came in pretty early in the season, around week 2, and continued to shove, hovered around a 2.0 ERA the entire summer. Along with that, I mean, the Harwich pitching staff's been unbelievable. They've, by a pretty comfortable margin, the least amount of runs allowed in the season. Had Jake McCoy, was unbelievable to start the season, South Carolina, showing stuff that he hadn't really shown throughout the spring. Stepped up, dominated every start, and then also got shut down, so he was out. But Troy Dressler, freshman out of Wake Forest, kind of some questions coming in, and he's done nothing but pitch great. He's been one of the most consistent starting pitchers out here. Christian Rodriguez from Florida, he's been unbelievable, only a couple earned runs out here. Main pitching dynamic, I would say, out here is Brady Hamilton, Tyler Pitzer, and YD. Brady's been probably the most consistent starting pitcher on Cape this summer, and Pitzer's been nothing but dominant, kind of in a long relief position out of the bullpen. Just the other night, I think he had 8 strikeouts in 4 innings against Harwich, so he's been really fun to watch. Logan Redeman was unbelievable when he was in Orleans. He had eyes on him at all times. Falmouth's one of those teams that they're not in the best place where they had been all season, but they've had some great arms come through. Joe Sabbath from New England guy, URI, Jacob Schultz, Vandy, he's been unbelievable. So talent's everywhere. I'm missing so many names right now that I have written and want to talk about. Will Whalen's been one of the best bullpen arms, and there's been so many more, so many guys in and out. But yeah, maybe the top tier talent was overseas, but we've still had great guys coming in and out.
What was the best pure stuff that you saw all summer? I really liked. He was pitching. Trying to think. Matthew Shorey. He's pitching here right now. He's with Bourne. I really like his stuff. He's been fun to watch. Kyle Remington, Ryan Buckler from up here in Cotuit. Cotuit's one of those teams that they're kind of down low in the standings right now, but they got some arms. Peyton Manka, he's been great. FSU kid, he's got good stuff. If I had to put, I don't know if I had to pick just one serious guy. I mean, Evan Blanco, he only threw, I think, maybe 1 start, but I got to see it in Hyannis. He was great. Yeah, I don't know if I could pick one specific guy. Tegan Coons, he was fun to watch. But Pitzer, I think Pitzer having that kind of cut fastball slider approach that just consistently leaves hitters off balance. He's a nightmare for hitters. All right, last question on Tyler Pitzer. Starter, reliever?
I think he's going to make the case that he should be a everyday starter. I mean, every weekend starter, but I mean, man, it's hard to take him out of a bullpen when he's looked this comfortable. It's almost like he's the starter on hold. Like 2 nights ago when he pitched against Harwich, their starter went inning and a third, just knowing that Pitzer was warm already. It's like he's more comfortable coming out of that pen. So if that's how he wants to do it and keep dominating, it's going to work. Guys are going to like it. Another honorable mention, though, who I forgot, Kyle Kipp, BC. He's got really good stuff, too. I've loved watching him. Kind of a bias to the Northeast. I like watching those guys. But over in Brewster, he's pitched really well.
I was going to say, you got to shout out the BC kid.
Yep.
Well, awesome. I do want to ask you, as the calendar's flipping here to August, last week of the season, we're getting towards the playoffs. Who do you like as we head to the playoffs? What your gut tell you?
I mean, Harwich and Wareham are cruising through their divisions right now, so it's going to be hard to not pick one of those two. I do really like the Orleans Firebirds right now. They look hot. They're getting hot at the right time. They their starting pitchers aren't as established. They got a lot of guys coming in, but they got Cole Triba. I want to make sure I'm not saying that one wrong. Steele Murdoch. They're manning the bullpen there and doing a excellent job. Obviously, I mentioned Logan Redmond early taking off. That was a tough loss for them, but their lineups cruising with the All-Stars. They got Cashel Duggar, Robbie Levy, Anthony Potestio, and then Alejandro Garza has been great too. So having some hot bats that are sticking around. I mean, we saw it last year. I think Harwich at one point went 2-17 to end the season and ended up winning it all. So it's who can get right at the right time, who's got the right arms in place going into playoffs. And yeah, it's going to be really fun to see.
Well, awesome. Yeah, it's going to be, like I told Adam earlier on the show, buckle up. You got a lot of teams that are congested at the top of, well, specifically in the East, but it's a lot of teams that are very similar. There isn't really like that one team that's, dominating at this point. So it should be a fun playoffs, kind of anyone's deal. Michael, I really appreciate you taking the time. Obviously you got a lot going on. There's always something going on at the league level. So thanks for hopping on, and best of luck to you the rest of the summer.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Matt.